Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get Watch Barbara Knit merchandise. Today, I've decided that I wanted to talk about something that it's kind of design. I'm not going to say theory, but it's a design kind of thing. But also, even if you're not interested in like starting to try to design your own stuff to like write your own patterns, if you want to just design or create your own items just for your own personal use, this is something that might be helpful for you. And I want to talk about one of the building blocks of knitwear. And when it comes down to it, there's so much math in knitting. And it's not just arithmetic, it's also geometry and things like that. And there are certain shapes that really dominate the knitting world. And one of my personal favorite shapes that is incredibly useful in knitting is the tube. Okay, so today we are going to talk about tubes and how amazing tubes are in knitting. I've considered designing like making a booklet of tubes and like having like, here's how you knit the tube and here are all the different things you can make this tube into. Because when you stop and think about it, the tube is the base of so many different types of garments or accessories that you can make. And now we're talking about knitting in the round. And as always, when we talk about knitting in the round, how you knit in the round is really a very personal preference. You can use a circular needle, a fixed circular needle, or interchangeable, I don't care, that is close to the circumference of what it is you are trying to make. Now, you cannot, like if you want to make something that's 24 inches around, you can make it on a 16-inch needle or a 24-inch needle, but you can't use a 25-inch needle. You can't use a circular needle that is bigger around than the circumference of the thing that you're trying to make, because your stitches won't join to knit in the round. Now, you can use the magic loop method, which is using a circular needle that is much longer than what you're trying to make so that you can pull parts of it out and have enough wiggle room to do it. You can use DPNs. You can use two circular needles where you essentially put half the stitches on one of the circular needles and half the stitches on the other circular needles. They now have things called flexi flips. There's so many different ways to knit in the round, and what you need to do is find what you like. But what I mean by knitting in the round is when you cast on your stitches, you join them and you are knitting essentially spirals. You're knitting in the round, but you're spiraling up and you're making a tube. As long as you don't increase or decrease, you got a tube, right? And as I said, the tube is the base for so many of our things that we like to make. So let's start at the bottom. Socks. Socks are simply tubes with a heel and a toe. You can make leggings, like leggings. You could make leggings like warmers. Leg warmers are tubes. That's all they are. A sweater, like the body part of a sweater, if you don't do any shaping, it's just the tube. Fingerless mitts or even fingerless mitts, mostly to say, are tubes with a hole for your thumb. Now, you can put a gusset in and like customize it, but pretty much you make a tube and like leave a hole for your thumb, or you can make a tube and then start knitting flat and then bring it back together and there's just a little hole for your thumb to stick out. It's a tube. A cowl is a tube. It's simply just a tube around your neck, and a hat is a cowl with hat decreases. I mean, so if you have your basic tube, you can make all kinds of things. So you could start a tube here and run it across to here. And once you get the length of your arm, split and start knitting flat from shoulder to shoulder, and then go back to knitting in a tube, and you've made a shrug. They were popular for a long time, not so much now, but again, it's just a tube with a flat part. So tubes are incredibly versatile, and you can make so many fun things with them that I am a huge proponent of tubes, which is why I said I've considered doing like an ebook where it's just like, here's the tube, and here's the cast on for a cowl, here's the cast on for a hat, here's the cast on for and just the different things that you can make with that tube. So I hope y'all join me in my love of tubes. Now, I want the design part of this that I wanted to work with y'all on and share with y'all is how you can take like an existing pattern. Now, of course, you can just pick a stitch out of a stitch dictionary and knit your own swatch and measure your own swatch and do your own math and create your own tube. But if that is like maybe too much for you, or if you don't really want to invest that much time into something, you can start with a pattern that you already own, that you've already purchased from a designer or in a magazine or in a book, and use the information from that pattern to then create your own whatever you want to create. And this kind of math will also help you if you're trying to modify something, that you're not trying to create a completely different thing, but say the pattern is written for a close to the neck cowl and you want to make a long cowl. This is how you do that math. So what you're going to do, I pulled this information out of my cowl, Second Sock Cowl. I'll show you a picture here. It'll be here somewhere. This is the Second Sock Cowl. It is knit in the round, and it is knit with fingering weight yarn. If you go and look at the link, there'll be specifications for the needle size and everything. So the first thing that you're going to see is the gauge information right here. And that is telling you what your gauge is. So you need to make sure that you have done your swatching and blocked your swatch, and you're getting this gauge for this information to be useful, okay? The next thing you gotta do is you have to look at the instructions and figure out what the stitch repeat is. If this pattern, I'm assuming, has a stitch in it that's like a repeated stitch, that you have decided you either need to change the cowl, or you want to make a hat out of it, or you want to make socks out of it, or you want to make whatever you want to do, you have to find this information, which is, so I found one line in the pattern that has a very simple, where you can really see the repeat, because what this says is purl 1, knit 3, let me make sure I can see it. Yep. Purl 1, knit 3, repeat from asterisk to end of round. So what that is telling you right there is this is a 4-stitch repeat. You are repeating the same 4 stitches all the way around. So we have a 4-stitch repeat. Now, you might, if it's a more complex pattern, you might want to double check within the instructions to make sure it's not thrown off, but figuring out the stitch pattern, doing a swatch at this point might also help you figure out the stitch pattern and how many stitches wide it is. But once you know how many stitches wide your repeat pattern is, then what you do is you figure out your cast on. And here are the instructions, and this is what the cast on is. And your cast on this particular pattern is 132 stitches. So you take that 132 stitches and divide it by your stitch count, which in what we just determined is 4. So 132 divided by 4, I pre-did my math, is 33. So 4 goes into 132 33 times. Why do we need this particular piece of information? Well, this is the finished size. The finished size is 20 inches in circumference. Okay, so we need to take that 20 inches in circumference and divide it by 33 repeats, which is how many 4-stitch repeats we got, and the end is 0.6 inches. So then we know one repeat of this particular stitch pattern with this yarn, with these needles at this gauge is 0.6 inches per repeat. Okay, so that is your building block. That is how you figure out then what you want to do. So say you're wanting to do socks. Is your sock going to be 7.5 inches around? So then you have to do the math. You take the 7.5 inches, divide it by, hang on, I'm pulling up my calculator. So if you're doing 7.5 inches and you're dividing it by 0.6, that is approximately 12.5 repeats. You're not going to want a half repeat. So you're either going to decide if you're going to go up or down. And so let's just say we're going to do 12 repeats. That 12 repeats times 4 stitches per repeat, so that your cast on will be 48 stitches. So I know that's a lot of math, and I told you at the beginning that it was going to be a lot of math, okay? But that is how you figure it out. You figure out the number of stitches per repeat of whatever pattern it is you want to use. And then you figure out how wide that is by using the cast on and the finished size provided by that pattern that you are working with. This is the same thing you would do, as I said, if you wanted to, like, the cowl is 20 inches. Okay, that cowl specific example was 20 inches. Let's say that you wanted a 25-inch cowl. So I'm going to take 5 inches divided by 0.6. It says 8.33. So what I would probably do is decide if I want to go a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. And so you would cast on 8 or 9 additional repeats, which would be 8 times 4, 32 or 36 additional stitches to make the whole thing bigger. And that is how you can modify that cowl to be a bigger cowl, or if you wanted to try to make a hat out of it. Now, hats are going to be a little bit more complicated because you have to figure out your crown decrease. It's fairly easy if you're okay with the crown decrease just being in stockinette. The easiest way to do that would be to cast on and do however much of a ribbing you want, work the borrowed stitch pattern, and then stop it when it's at the length you want, and then just work a standard crown in stockinette. There are all kinds of calculators that you can find online with that. We might make a video, but again, it's going to be a math heavy video, just like this one is. But I hope that this one wasn't too, because I'm talking really fast and it's a lot of numbers. You might have to run this video back and play it a couple times. If you have questions, or if anything I said was just like, whoo, right over your head, please ask me in the comments and I can do my best to try to answer the questions and maybe make things a little bit more clear. And again, so this is really intended to help people who are wanting to just modify, and maybe like they have a pattern that they already have that already has the gauge figured out and everything, and they want to make something else with that pattern for their own personal use. We're going to get into, like, if you are trying to design something that you are then going to like write and publish the pattern independently, it's usually better to start with making your own gauge so that you know your gauge and you know your yarn and you know your needles, and so that you're not running into any pitfalls. And that's where a stitch dictionary comes in. But it's the same basic process. You just figure out, you make your gauge, you figure out how wide your individual stitch pad, like the one repeat is, and then just figure out how many repeats you want to do around your tube, and you are just on your way to making all kinds of fun socks, gloves, mittens, cowls, hats, what have you. As I said, you can make you can make a shrug and everything. So I have other shapes that are fun and to think about. And I hope that y'all like this kind of video. Let me know in the comments if, as I said, there's any questions you have, or if there's anything else you'd like to hear about. Happy New Year, by the way. It is January and we are into 2024. There's a leap year this year. Maybe we should do something special for the bonus day that we have. I wonder what day it falls. I'm going to look and see what day it falls into. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.